one of the hardest parts of FND or functional neurological disorder is this wide range of symptoms, especially for teens. And families, as a result, often feel overwhelmed, understandably, because nothing looks consistent and no one explains how it falls all into together. So in this video, I'm going to cover these three things: what FND actually is and why symptoms can look so different, especially for teens, because it doesn't necessarily happen for older adults. Second, the main categories of FND symptoms and then how they connect to the nervous system, right? And then the third, more importantly, what families can do next once they start recognizing these patterns. Hi, my name is Dr. Lee. I'm a pediatric health psychologist and the founder of Teen FND Academy, which is an online coaching program that helps teens with functional neurological disorder and their parents get their lives back. I care deeply about this work because I see how overwhelming and confusing FND can feel for many families, if not all families, especially when nothing seems to make sense and answers feel very vague or dismissive. And when families are given clear education and a framework or roadmap, is what I would call it, that actually explains what's happening, things start to feel a lot more manageable and more hopeful. And this is exactly what I do. So many families, if you are not already, are told things like, your child has an FND, it's just stress, or it doesn't really make sense, or nothing is wrong with your child, we can't find anything. All of the above and then some. But the FND symptoms are not random and they are not meaningless either. They actually follow patterns based on how the brain and nervous system are communicating. To be specific, this is the brain-body communication. But once you understand how FND actually works, because it sounds very mysterious maybe for you, the symptoms start to make a lot more sense, not only for you, but for your teen too. And before we break down the symptoms, it is really important to ground ourselves in what FND actually is. Would you agree? So let's dive in. So functional neurological disorder, short for FND, happens when the brain gets stuck in this pattern where signals to and from the body are not necessarily working the way they should. And that's why medical tests often look very normal, even though your teen does not feel or function normally. You know your teen is not making things up, and you also know that your teen is not doing this for attention either. FND is literally a disorder of function. It's not a structure. That's why most of the tests, if not any of the tests, don't show anything about FND. The nervous system is not broken. It is literally misfiring, and because it's a functional problem, it means, here's the good news, the system can be retrained between your teen's brain and body. And I'd like to explain this using a fire alarm analogy. Maybe this makes sense for you. So think of FND symptoms as a fire alarm. It kind of doesn't matter what kind of symptoms we're talking about, which we're going to get to it. But for the sake of conversation right now, think of the entire FND symptoms as a fire alarm. The alarm is super loud, very disruptive, and scary. Like it grabs everybody's attention, including you and I. But we also know the alarm system itself is not the fire. The real issue is what's happening in the system, which is the fire, the brain sending mixed or inaccurate signals to the body and vice versa. And with FND, the fire alarm is the symptoms, right? So they can keep going off even when there is no actual fire at some point. And once that signal disruption starts, it can show up in so many different systems of the body, often starting with movement. The first category of symptom is actually movement or motor symptoms. And by far, this is the most common type of FND. That doesn't mean this is the only common type of FND, but let me start there. So these symptoms of motor or movement symptoms are often the first things families notice. And they usually cause a lot of fear and confusion, right? So this can include something like trouble walking, sudden leg weakness, tremors, shaking or jerky movements, muscle stiffness or floppiness, collapsing or abnormal posture. All of these things, it's like confusing and doesn't make sense. So families often notice that these symptoms change with stress, attention, or focus. So families are literally trying to find out what is causing this. The changeability does not mean that symptoms are faking, right? Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. That's what I'm talking about, the changeability. It literally means a fire alarm system is sensitive and reactive, and sometimes it goes off. The alarm is real, even if there is no structural damage causing it. So if you have seen movement symptoms of your child like this, you're not alone, even though it can feel very isolating and confusing and sometimes terrifying, if not a lot of times. But the movement is only one part of the picture. FND also affects how the body feels, which leads to the next category of FND. The second category is sensory and body sensation symptoms. So FND can completely change how the body experiences sensations. So your teen or other teens may have numbness or tingling in their arms, legs, or face, or all over the body, or half of the body. They may experience vision changes like blurriness or tunnel vision, or complete blindness, or sensitivity to light or sound, or a feeling of being disconnected from their body, like a dissociation. And these symptoms reflect a nervous system that is stuck in this either survival mode or completely frozen mode. Again, the fire alarm is constantly on high alert, even when the environment itself is safe, because with FND, that fire, the actual fire, is the brain-body miscommunication. So as long as you are focusing on the source of the fire, then you're on the good side. However, if you're just focusing on the symptoms of this movement or sensation and things like that, then you're just focusing on the fire alarm, which is not the solution, and you're kind of looking at the wrong place. So when the brain is overloaded like this, it often affects thinking and energy as well, as you can imagine. So the third category is this cognitive and energy related symptom. These symptoms may be quieter, but they impact daily life just as much, and it's just as debilitating. So this can include brain fog, slow thinking, memory or concentration difficulties, and extreme fatigue, like a super tired, like a zombie, that is not explained by lab work. The Family Guy shares a handful of practical strategies to help you get out of this survival mode, and it shows why our structured approach gets such a strong result. Grab it from the description below. It is free. Again, these are the symptoms, fire alarms, right? And they are another sign that the alarm system is running nonstop and draining the system. However, we are not just focusing on the alarm system, because we have to focus on the fire. Now, moving on. Some symptoms are even more alarming and often lead families to the emergency room. Not that all of the other categories are not important, but the fourth category includes speech changes and seizure-like episodes. So this can include sudden stuttering, whispering, loss of speech, and panicky, right? Or seizure-like episodes that do not show epileptic activity on EEG, nothing on MRI, or fainting, breathing difficulty, or just going completely limp. And these are often called non-epileptic episodes, and they are part of that FND pattern. Now, one thing families notice across all of these symptom categories is how much they can change from day to day, especially for children and adolescents. The unpredictability of FND is one of the most confusing parts, but it's actually a pretty common thing for teens with FND. Less so with adults or older adults, all right? That doesn't mean that they would never have this kind of variability, but it's more common among younger people. But it's also one of the key diagnostic signs in a blessing in disguise way. Symptoms often change with fatigue, stress, overwhelm, or change in focus and attention. And this is why a lot of people think, oh, it's a stress. Stress is the fire. And that's why as long as we focus on the stress management as a fire, then we can get rid of these fire alarms. No. In this fire analogy, stress can be more like a kindling or oxygen, that kind of thing. It's not the actual source of it. This variability, though, is expected in FND, and it is not a red flag, even though it doesn't sound like it. If you're seeing symptoms from more than one category, it is literally time to stop guessing and then do this DIY formula and then stop chasing the alarm. Instead of trying to silence symptoms one by one, which I would call it a symptom chasing behavior, which is exhausting and it does not solve anything. The focus needs to shift to retraining the system of brain-body communication itself. Now, ask about FND as a positive diagnosis to your doctor or your child's doctor. Look for approaches that focus on brain-body retraining rather than just symptom management. Earlier understanding and the right guidance also lead to better outcomes. I've seen it one too many times. If you want to see how my full program of Teen FND Academy works and how it's helping families resolve FND for real, then watch the video linked in the description box below. And by the way, if you're a parent of teens watching this, comment parent below, because you are definitely not alone in this. And if you're starting to recognize these symptom patterns, not just focusing on the triggers or the stress, and wondering why things sometimes seem to get worse instead of better, I have linked another video just like this where I explain 3 common patterns that actually make FND worse. Watch that next. It connects directly to what we've talked about right here.